Welcome to John's Tarot. Thank you very much. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I got a story about how I used the same pattern of threshold map integration in a clinical setting. This story goes back to COVID. Must have been like February of 2020. And COVID was just starting to appear. I had been hearing about it on the news and hearing how it's kind of creeping in. And we got our first COVID patient at the hospital. Whenever bad things happen at the hospital, I'm usually the first one to know about that. I usually get the problem right away. And people were terrified of the whole COVID thing because early on there was no vaccine. We had no idea how to treat it. This is the very early days of COVID, and we got a patient in, and I remember the story. I might as well tell you the whole story. This patient came in from overseas. I won't say from where. It's a female patient, and I talked to her, and she got off the plane, and the plane was full of sick people, and they got off the plane in LAX. It had happened on the East Coast too, and after I talked to this patient, I really understood that we are in for trouble now because airplanes are coming in from overseas unregulated with sick people, and the people were getting off the plane, and bam, it was spreading like wildfire, and we know that's what happened. And we all had a terrible time going through it. So anyway, I have this patient, and I see what's going on. And luckily at my hospital, there was enough PPE that I wasn't without PPE, but people were still terrified. I'm there in the ICU. So that the threshold is me having to enter and treat the patient. And people are watching me because on this ICU, there's individual rooms, and then there's doorways. Glass doorways, big glass wall, and it was open, and they're watching me, and all the other nurses are watching me, and I've got to cross the threshold, and I'm an older guy. I already know that this is not a joke, that this is a big risk, and I'm taking a big risk. However, my thought was that on this threshold, that what I did at that moment was going to determine how we were going to move forward with treatment in our hospital, and that I had to step forward. I had a basic map in terms of basic protection, proper masks, gown, gloves, that type of stuff, and that I had to be ultra cautious. And the nurses were right outside the doorway watching me. They're looking at me with big eyes like that, and I knew it was important. So the threshold was my own fear. I had to cross the threshold of my own fear. The map, I understood exactly how how to treat somebody with infectious disease of that nature. And then integration, ultimately, that patient got intubated, and ultimately they didn't make it. And I'm sorry about that, but she was one of many who didn't make it during that period of time. What was important for me was that set up what I did with that first patient, actually set out our whole treatment policy throughout the pandemic. Threshold, map, integration, and many people didn't survive that. And of the people early on, of the people intubated, maybe 10% survived. And but it set the precedent for what happened beyond that. And then the treatment precedent. The doctor followed in behind me, and we looked at the x-rays, and x-rays were always whited out, and there were certain lab markers that always appeared. And after they got intubated, it was just, we did what we worked with what we had. That was before there was any type of vaccine or there was any antibody treatment or anything like that. And I helped set the treatment policy at our hospital by doing that, by following that basic guide of threshold, map, integration. And I helped form the map by my behavior. And then, of course, the physician was there, and they completed the map and the integration being treatment of all those COVID patients. let's move over to the tarot portion. I switched to the wrong scene. During that first tarot patient, during that first COVID patient, how did I implement threshold map integration for that first COVID patient? How did I use the threshold map integration idea? And this is not something I do consciously. It's something that appears. It just appears. And when it appears, I clearly see when I'm in the threshold. And then I have an idea of what to do. I'm doing this so that when you run into you're at a threshold, you identify the threshold and then look for the map and then integrate it in your life, because these are the opportunity for change in your life. So during that first COVID patient, how did I integrate that threshold map integration? I'll cut the deck. My first card is the Three of Wands. During that first patient, during that first period of time, other people were watching me, the Three of Wands. I knew what I needed to do. I crossed into the threshold. Other people were watching me. I knew what I was doing was important, in that I was setting the precedent, that I chose to voluntarily. I could have walked out of the hospital. I could have said, "No, I'm not doing this." Many nurses did. They would call in, "Oh yeah, I got to take care of my mom. Yeah, she's got the hemorrhoids, and I can't come in for about 3-4 months." And many nurses did that. But I chose not to do that. I crossed the threshold of my own fear, knowing that other people were looking, and I had to overcome my own fear and do a job and do it. And I understood at that time that this is what all the training was about for me personally. All the opportunity, all the training, all the education. This is where the rubber meets the road for me personally. And I understood that intellectually. So I chose to cross the threshold. And then what was the map? The Knight of Cups. And that is just what I talked about. The Knight of Cups. The Knight of Cups has to do with, this is where you always wanted to be. And like I said, I maybe not always wanted to be in that life or death situation, but I understood that this is where the rubber met the road for me personally. This is where the training kicked in. And this is what it was all about. And it was important for me to help develop that map for others and provide a little bit of leadership, a little bit of positive example for others to follow. And that's what that was about. And then integration. During that situation, it's the Seven of Pentacles. For those of you listening on the podcast, that set up the process, and it was a long-term process. It wasn't just we'll just do this and it'll always be resolved. No, the process evolved. As treatments evolved, our process evolved. But the same map was followed for each patient. That integration phase, the same map was followed for each patient, where we identify the problem, we implement treatment, and the treatments are what changed. And because the Seven of Pentacles is about not solving a problem all at once, not trying to win the lottery, but to consistently work on a problem and for the best benefit. And that's how we accomplished coming out of COVID, really, was that treatments changed, treatments evolved, vaccines appeared, the antibody treatment appeared. Initially, it was just we were just giving them steroids. That was the only thing we had to give them. And the truth came out about, but it was a process. The process had to be followed, and it was a slow, laborious process that had to be worked through. And it was unfortunate that many people did not make it through. Following the recommendations of the medical team on Fox News, led by we know who was leading those types of events. So for today, be careful, be cool, be kind, and I'll see you on the next John's Tarot. Okay, bye-bye.